Most cars have a short list of main objectives, and the ones that don't often struggle to survive. The Lexus IS500 is unique though. It lacks a clear goal, but it's aimless in a strangely humanizing way. Just like basically all other luxury sedans, this makes very little financial sense. It's going to technically start out at about $60,000, but I can't find a single one in the country for less than $63 because they seem to all have the premium package, which I would recommend getting anyway, as it gives you things like better headlights and a 360 view camera that does have a disappointing resolution but is helpful nonetheless. But if you manage to spawn a base model, those too will have LED projector headlights and rain sensing windshield wipers. And they will also all have the F-Sport appearance package, which makes the IS look angry, like an LA local when you don't experience ego death after eating In-N-Out for the first time.
More angry than the IS are the people who try to buy these, as getting one for stickers still seems to be tricky.
Next to me is a 2022. For 2023, you can get a sick-looking traffic cone color. 19-inch BBS forged wheels become an option. All of the wheels are black, not like these, which I actually prefer. And there's an additional appearance package available if you want it. I would expect there to be an IS complete redesign sometime soon, and even though I'd like to say they should, I highly doubt that they're going to keep this package with the V8 alive. Now, when it comes to the aesthetic, I'm in love. Unlike some of Lexus's other products, in no one area did they go over the top with this thing.
The V8 is in the details. Look closer and you notice the front end that's a couple inches longer than its more vanilla siblings. There's also a larger hood bulge, big two-piece rotors up front, and a stacked quad exit exhaust. All of these things hint at the tomfoolery, but the untrained eye likely won't catch the cues.
And I love the way that the refreshed IS looks to begin with, especially the lighting around back, but let me know what you guys think in the comments section. To no one's surprise, all of these will also come with proximity unlock and lock as standard. It is so foggy. This camera is like 20 feet away. The interior of the Lexus IS500 does a few things very well, but it also makes some head-scratching errors. So to start things off, I like that with the IS500, there's not a bunch of packages that you have to upgrade to in order to get the features you want. You just pay for them all up front. You'll have things like heated and ventilated seats, standard, a heated steering wheel, standard, and of course leather, and it's of a really nice quality too, and you even have very plush padding where your knees rest, but that also hints at one of the problems with this thing, and that is going to be space. I am 6'3". I can fit in here just fine, but I think the main issue is that if you're kind of wider, the console here just has a lot of girth, and you may just get a little claustrophobic. Now, as I've mentioned, basically all of these have the premium package anyway, and so what that is going to get you is a 17-speaker Mark Levinson audio system that has 1800 watts. It is very powerful, it's crisp, and then you will also get a power rear sunshade and a bigger 10-inch infotainment system with navigation. And this setup is outstanding for making sure that I am not distracted. And that is not because of easy controls or a responsive high-resolution screen. It's because it's so bad that I don't even want to use it while I'm driving. This is definitely a stretch if you're trying to use it as a touchscreen, which is why Lexus includes this trackpad thing that people have complained about a lot. I actually do like the force feedback, and it does do an okay job at predicting where you're going to go, so that way you don't have to be super accurate, but it's still frustrating to use in motion. I find the icons too small for me to be able to pinpoint my finger very easily. I think Lexus's latest infotainment system that they put into the new NX is leagues better. I hope that they can implement that on the next IS. What I like about this is that they don't integrate all of the HVAC controls. You actually have your individual buttons and then sliders for the temperature down here.
The latter of which works, but I'd still prefer a dial or toggle.
The gauge cluster also looks neat, but lacks a whole lot of functionality. And there is no head-up display available with the IS500. No wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. It is wired only, and you don't have any USB-C ports. But Lexus has been paying attention to calls from all across the land, and they've given you an analog clock. okay, as much as I'm making jokes, that part does look pretty nice, especially at night. I also think that you have very smart materials in here.
They kept glossy plastics to a minimum in the areas that would accumulate the most dust and scratches.
You actually have matte finish buttons, even in the areas with shiny plastics, and it also does have a pretty solid feel. I also like some of the accents, like the dashboard shape and these cool vents. There's definitely a lot of plastic, but there's also some nice stitching and leather throughout. There's not really a hint of Toyota-ness put into this cabin. It just feels dated because it is. This car came out originally in about 2014. But what I think is more important than wooing your passengers with maximum screenage is comfortable seats. And this has that. Ooh, yes. These are very soft. They are bolstered a little bit, but really, I mean, nothing more than what you would get in a regular luxury sedan. You can get plenty of arc out of them, so you have pretty good thigh support, even though the seat bottoms aren't crazy long. You have obviously standard lumbar adjustment, and I think they're just well contoured, very agreeable seats. And then the storage in here is also okay. We have a good amount of space in the door card, a reasonable size center console, and in none of those spots will you find a wireless charger. But that's not a big deal because honestly, most wireless chargers these days do not work with a giant camera bump like a lot of phones have. Sitting behind myself in a comfortable yet not excessive position, my knees are kind of caressing the side of the seat. My head is hitting the roof. If I kind of adjust myself a little bit, maybe slouch some, I could sit back here if I had to. I do have rear vents, which is always nice to see, and a center armrest, of course, that has some sneaky cup holders. I like, again, that you have very plush elbow rests and seats.
It could improvise as a family car if it needed to.
The trunk of the Lexus IS500 is surprisingly impressive. I mean, yeah, you're not going to shame a Honda Civic, considering this is a luxury car with more insulation and still a spare tire beneath the floor. I'm fairly impressed, and of course you can fold down the rear seats too if you'd like. Behind the wheel of the Lexus IS500, you'll find that this thing isn't overly impressive, but it's very refreshing. The thing that steals the show is in the name. It is a 5-liter naturally aspirated V8 making 472 horsepower at 7,100 RPM. Now that power figure for this price is more than respectable.
But it's partially neutered by this 8-speed torque converter automatic that's tuned for refinement.
So, foot to the floor there, it doesn't do a great job of, one, kicking down to the right gear immediately.
It doesn't snap off gears either, and the paddle shifters have a notable latency.
The personality of this engine and transmission strongly clash with one another. Now, it is reasonably capable, because 0 to 60 can come up in about 4.3 seconds according to Motor Trend. We have to remember, that's not what it's going for here. This is rear-wheel drive only. So you will have a Torsen LSD at the back as standard,
which does a great job at sorting out the traction. The short wheelbase also seems to help get weight over the rear wheels, and the power band is most potent at high RPM, so this can get squirrely.
But you really have to be asking for it. I do want to compliment this for its level of grip. It does have a tendency to push a little bit more, and surprisingly, you really do need to prompt the thing if you want it to oversteer. There's also just that kind of exhilarating factor there of it being rear-wheel drive. There is something in the back of your head at all times telling you, you know, things can get sideways, watch yourself.
And that limit-pushing mentality is morally opposed to the suspension that prioritizes comfort.
It does a good job of reducing vibrations and isolating me from the road. So I'm left not as confident because I don't really get the best idea of what the road surface is like. And then on top of that, the steering is more lifeless than the first guy to find out that you could cook blowfish wrong. When it comes to the fun factor, it's the engine pulling you through everything because it's just so intoxicating to listen to. The induction sound is fantastic. It's so much power and great response. So when I have it in its manual mode and I'm already in the right gear, the thing just hustles. Over here, I want to just keep it in second gear, get it to 4,000 RPMs, and like a new snarl develops. It's got so much charisma.
The 5-liter wants to be wrung out. One disclaimer, it does add in engine noise through the speakers, partially because the exhaust is excessively muffled. It's like listening to Whitney Houston through an iPhone speaker. You can tell she has an amazing voice, but there's not enough of it.
If they could just pair this with better steering. I don't even need a stiffer suspension because that would defeat the purpose. I just want to get to know the car better. And also when the road gets really tight and technical and the engine can't do its thing, it kind of becomes a chore. The steering itself, when you're in its Sport S Plus mode, they actually skip sport mode because that's how serious this car is about having fun. The steering is not too floaty, but it's just overboosted and numb. The brakes do have a strong bite to them,
but they're still smooth and easy to modulate.
When the visibility is gone and I'm definitely not confident enough to push this thing and really wring out that engine, it becomes just a everyday Lexus IS. The steering is not telling me very much, but it's also making the experience less dramatic, and the weight is still substantial and it feels very secure, and the suspension is also very smooth. You will feel the bumps, you will hear them, but none of the light to medium kind of imperfections come off sharp. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it's controlled. Now pulling up to highway speed, the transmission, unless you have it in one of the Sport S modes, doesn't really like to downshift, but there is plenty of low down torque, so it doesn't usually need to unless you're trying to merge, in which case it will require a nice planting of the throttle. At 65 miles per hour, it's revving around 1800 RPM. While the road surface here is very noisy, this tends to be as quiet as you would expect for maybe a $50,000 car. Getting into that $60,000, $65,000 range, there are definitely more serene vehicles out there, but at least this does smooth out the undulations of the highway quite nicely.
To make highway driving easier, blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise, and lane centering are all standard.
This also has, as standard, a Yamaha performance damper, and no, that's not a shock. It's actually a transverse mounted dampener designed to reduce vibrations, and it does just that.
Now the car may sound complex, but this generation of Lexus IS has been around since the 2014 model year, and it has been dependable, with excessive tire wear and low pressure fuel pump failures being among the biggest complaints. This also does have direct and port fuel injection, so carbon buildup shouldn't be a concern. The 5-liter V8 has only been in the IS since 22, but it's been around in the Lexus lineup for over a decade. It used to develop coolant leaks in the valley plate, but that is not an issue anymore. Finding problems is hard, but it seems that some GSF owners have encountered AC evaporator mildew, some fuel pump failures, water pump leaks, and catalytic converter failure way down the road. Some also reported a noisy idler pulley, but most do not run into issues. My car actually did have a mysterious engine squeak, but it's a press car with over 20,000 miles, so I can't fathom what this thing has been through. Everything else was flawless, and this is a robust engine that's only gotten better over the years. Just know it's not a cheap motor if you need to fix it, and it's also not cheap to fuel. When I was easy on it, I could manage 20 miles per gallon, and obviously it takes premium. Lastly, Lexus's adaptive variable suspension seems to garner little complaints.
This is a comfortable car. Of course, the roads around here aren't as bad as they are in Indiana, so I won't be able to torture test the thing like that, but it's handled everything I've thrown this through with a remarkable level of comfort. And this does have an adaptive suspension as well, though it only goes from normal to sport. In neither of those is it rock hard or Luxobarge-esque. But I'm kind of beating this horse more numb than the steering of the Lexus IS500. It's not a sports sedan, and the interior is also more dated and less intuitive
than basically any other luxury compact,
making it not the easiest car in the class to live with. And to top things off, I wouldn't even bother comparing this to something like a BMW M3. Really, even if you're looking at the acceleration numbers and how it feels, a car like the Audi S5 or BMW 340i are really just as capable, and I think the steering in those is more precise, but none of them can match the engine or the comfort. There's so much about this that is very impressive, and just like many other vehicles out there, it makes compromises in certain areas.
But the specific attributes that the IS500 focuses on are often counterintuitive at the surface. It has a relatively soft and forgiving ride that comes with some noticeable body roll, yet there's an engine with the power and sound of an authentic sports car. That aggressive heart is then matched to an automatic that strives to be silky, not short-tempered. The exterior has fancy lights, bold lines, and muscular proportions, yet its interior is plush with old tech and physical buttons. And the most rare thing of all, it's a fast luxury car that you can actually trust for countless miles. It vaguely reminds me of an LS from the late 2000s, but with a shorter wheelbase and performance-enhancing drugs. Its unique approach to a luxury sport compact isn't going to have much broad appeal. The dead steering, unintuitive tech, and poor gas mileage are objective low points, but none ruin the experience. Its competitors are more well-rounded, but I feel the passion behind a project like this. It's as if a few Lexus engineers bypassed the boardrooms to build a car they'd actually drive. What humanizes the IS500 is that its flaws and strengths don't all align with one general purpose. And I'm thinking that was the point. We're constantly told how a car with its specifications is supposed to behave, so it's refreshing to see the rules broken in the name of preference, not incompetence. Well, for the most part. If you're in the market for a racy, luxury sedan, this may not impress. If you're looking for the ultimate cruiser with cutting-edge tech and a posh cabin, I'd still look the other way. But if you're seeking a car with character that's forgiving enough to make day in, day out use pleasant, reliable enough to do it for decades, and special enough to make you look forward to your commutes, the IS500 is about as perfect as it could get. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like to help me play the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications, and follow me on Patreon for an additional podcast. I'll catch you in the next one.